Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today we're going to be talking about some of the best Sapphic fantasy books. So this is a very exciting topic obviously because I love Sapphic books and I love fantasy books. So put the two together and it's like the dream. This is actually part 2 of this like series. The first part came out about a year ago. Which it wasn't a part at the time, but I thought I would do another installment because I've read more books since then and have more to talk about, and that video is really successful, so it's probably my most viewed video on my channel, which makes me really excited that more people are passionate about Sapphic books. So yeah, we love to see it. But yeah, so I wanted to make a part 2 because there's more books that I've read since then that I want to share the love with. So yeah, we're going to talk about them today. And I also have the Sapphic sci-fi books list, which so I'll link both the part 1 for Sapphic fantasy and part 2 for not part 2 this is part 2, part 1 / part 0 there's only one of them for the Sapphic fantasy book, Sapphic sci-fi books. I can't even think today. Yeah, and I would highly recommend that sci-fi video because that's not as popular as the fantasy one, but some of my absolute favourites are in that video. Gideon. But yeah, so we're joined by Panini today, who is the cutest little ghost. And yeah, let's just get started on the books. So the first book I want to talk about is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, who's also known as Shauna Maguire. But I think this is definitely my favourite of her books. But this is just so, I feel like it's fantasy, but it's also toes the line into like horror. So we're basically following the crew of this ship, and they are going on a mission to the Marianas Trench because like 5 years ago this other ship went missing, but some footage came out from the missing ship of these like mysterious siren type creatures like mermaids. So they are then going to investigate more about these mermaids, and they're going on this like really beefed up security ship with like loads of scientists to try and work out what's going on. But then obviously things start sort of going a bit wrong and getting a bit sinister, and like the atmosphere and the world building and the tension is just done so well. And also like 2 of the main characters, so I would say the main character we're following is, I think she's called Tori, and her sister was on the original ship that went like missing. So she's almost out for revenge, and then she has a relationship with this other character whose name I've forgotten. I think it begins with an E, but who is like a reporter, and she is almost the role of what Tori's sister was doing on the original ship. So there's a bit of beef at first between them, but then it grows into this really cute little romance, which I really loved. And then obviously it's threatened by this existential threat. But yeah, and I really like some of the other characters as well. There's lots of interesting kind of stories and like that's brought them to the ship, which I really liked. The other character is called Olivia, I think. And she has this like himbo like bodyguard cameraman thing, which I love. Yeah, and just the whole like creepy ocean cinematics is just so good, and I love how it like explores a lot about sound, and that's a really interesting and fascinating concept. And I just find the like whole ocean and like the deep sea, and it is just so fascinating. And I also think it's really interesting like how humans know more about outer space than they do about the bottom of the ocean, and I think this book just perfectly captures that like haunting, mysterious quality of the deep sea. So yeah, I would highly recommend. And then next we have a recent book I read, and that is Princess of Dorset, and this is the Dorset Chronicles. I think that's the series is called, so it's a duology. So the first one is Princess of Dorset, and then the second one is Soldier of Dorset. Haven't actually read Soldier of Dorset yet, but I'm sure it'll be just as good as book 1. And this book really took me by surprise with how much I loved it, because I think I was expecting maybe a bit of like more of a YA fantasy type thing, but actually it's really good. There's some like really good politics. I really like the relationship. It's basically Sapphic princess and the bodyguard, which is a god tier trope no matter what the like genders of the pairing. I just loved it so much. And yeah, so basically following the princess Tasia, I think, yeah. And she is, I actually really like her. She's not the like nicest person. Like she's I feel like she's likeable to follow as a narrator, but she's actually a bit of a like dick. Like she's what you'd expect a princess to be. Like she's quite arrogant and a bit snobby and that kind of thing. But I really like how she starts off that way, but then we do see her grow throughout the book, and she gets a bit kind of kinder and more understanding. But I don't know, I just like that she's like that at the start of the book, because it's kind of, if you'd been like grown up having the world kiss your ass, you would kind of be a bit like that. So I like that. And then she essentially gets this bodyguard who's like, there's a bit of tension there, and then they start falling for each other. But at the same time, there's lots of politics going on in the kingdom. So like at the start of the book, Tasia has like an assassination attempt against her, and so that's why she gets the bodyguard. But then there's various things, and then her father like makes her heir, because the women aren't normally like empresses in the kingdom, and like they're also trying to marry her off, and there's lots of court drama, which I really like. And then they sort of go on a bit of a quest in the second half of the book to try, I'm not entirely sure why they're going on this quest. I think it's to try and appease like part of the empire or something. But anyway, it's really good. I really love the romance, and yeah, I just highly recommend. So yeah, and then after that we have Nightshine by Tessa Gretton. So this book actually has a main, I would say the main relationship is Sapphic, but then there's also a side kind of romance as well, but I love them both. And the Sapphic romance is like a villain romance kind of. So the main story, we're following this girl called Nothing, and then she is like an orphan who's grown up in the court, and she's great friends with the prince and his bodyguard called Sky. So yeah, the one is Prince and the Bodyguard, which is great. But anyway, so yeah, so Nothing has grown up like best friends with the prince, but then one day the prince gets taken by this character called the sorceress who eats girls. And obviously they're a little bit confused, because like, why is she taking the prince when normally she eats girls? But the prince is actually non-binary, which is interesting as well. But the sorceress has actually taken him like as a hostage. And then Sky, who is the bodyguard, and Nothing team up, and they go on a quest to save the prince. But then when they sort of get to the sorceress who eats girls layer, things start going down, and there's a bit of romance between Nothing and the sorceress, and Nothing kind of discovers more about who she is and like her powers and things, and I just really love it. It's just so good. Like the writing is immaculate. Like the Studio Ghibli vibes are just so like, oh, good. And just, it's really like, I don't know how to describe it, but like the dialogue feels a bit different from like other books. Like I wouldn't say it's exactly realistic dialogue, but it's like really juicy and like drama filled. I don't know how to describe it, but maybe in a way it is realistic, because like it doesn't always like make full sense, but like it's kind of almost how you talk with like a really close friend. I don't know, but I thought it was really good. I really liked it. Yeah, and it's a really great sort of coming into yourself, believing in yourself type story as well. And yeah, great romance, so would highly recommend that one as well. And the new cover is 1,000 times better than the old cover. I'm very glad they changed it, because honestly it deserves more love. I think it could be really popular, but no one wants it. But it's like a hidden gem, so yeah. Okay, then after that we have Malice by Heather Walter, and this is a Sapphic Sleeping Beauty villain origin story type retelling. So we're following the like evil, the queen, is it? She's called Maleficent in the that's from Sleeping Beauty, isn't it? But anyway, but in this retelling anyway, we're following this character called Alice, who's sometimes known as Malice because she's like evil. But anyway, she's like a witch or a sorceress or something who like she lives in this almost like cluster I don't know, she lives with these other witches, but all the other witches have like really like pretty powers, like they can grow roses and like make people beautiful, but then she has quite dark magic. But she ends up meeting the princess who's like called Briar Rose, and then they start striking up a like friendship and maybe blossoming into more, and I really like that aspect of it. And I also really like sort of Alice's journey with how she like grappling with her kind of identity and like what she wants, and she's often painted as the villain and like who she is. And then the ending of the book is excellent. Like I was like kind of shook, because I wasn't quite expecting that level of like, I don't know, it's just really good. I would say it's worth reading the book like for the ending alone, because it's good. And yeah, I really like the romance as well. I thought it was very like angsty and just good. And it's a bit forbidden as well. So yeah, and I really like it when books, like queer books, have like forbidden romance, but not because it's queer, because there's like some other element like keeping them apart, like the Princess and the Bodyguard, or like the Princess and the like evil sorceress. I don't know, it's so good. So yeah, I would highly recommend that one. Okay, then next we have The Counsellor by E.J. Beaton. So this one doesn't really feature a like predominant kind of sapphic romance, but the main character is bisexual, and she has had this like past relationship with this other woman, which is sort of, you see parts of it in like flashbacks and hookups and things, which I really like. And it's a very like bisexual story, so I feel like it deserved a place on this list. And like Liz is just, the main character is called Lysandra, and she is just like the inner horny, anxious bisexual inner soul. She's really good. So this one, we're following her, and she is like the scholar to this powerful queen, and she kind of is quite admiring of this queen, but one day at the beginning of the book the queen dies and she's essentially poisoned, and it's now down to Liz, because she's been named as like the person who has to investigate what's happened and name a new successor. So she's trying to choose who's going to be like the new ruler of the empire, at the same time as investigating who's poisoned the previous queen, or the queen who died. So yeah, it's very interesting, and she's just like this palace scholar who's been thrust into these reigns of power, and it's just really interesting. It's very political, but really fascinating. I love all the characters. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I would highly recommend. Yeah. And then we also have The Midnight Girl. So this is YA, this is by Alicia Janiska. I also really love her first book, The Dark Tide, but I feel like I maybe love The Midnight Girls a bit more. And this is another bit of a villainy romance. It's like rivals to lovers, but almost when they become lovers they kind of stay rivals, which I just love. It's so juicy. Basically following Marinka, who is known as what's she known as? Midday, I think. And like this red witch, and she has like grown up as this apprentice to this, oh no, she's grown up as the apprentice to like Red Yaga, and she like has to steal hearts from pure people to give to the witch, but she is like closely rivaled by Midnight, who is also known as Zosia, who works for Black Yaga, and they're like rivals. So like Marinka will always be like going for the heart, but then Zosia will have got there first, but they've never really met. They just know that like the Midnight and Midday, they're like rivals. And yes, but then so Marinka gets sent on this mission to I think it's Paris, somewhere, some other city, it might be fictional, but to get the heart of this prince who's like meant to be the purest heart in the kingdom. And then along the way she ends up travelling with this other character called Zosia, but she doesn't know that Zosia is actually like her biggest rival, Midnight, and it's so juicy. And then they both get there and they're both trying to vie for the heart of this prince, like not his heart as in his love, his heart as in his literal heart. And it's just so good, like the thwarting that goes on, the like secret identity, the like rivalry. It's just all so good, honestly. And I really love the atmosphere of the book as well. It's very sort of, I would say like Anastasia-y, like it's kind of wintry. It's like the kind of that sort of European, the sort of certain area of Europe, like the kind of, I don't know the best way to describe it. Like if like this is Europe, the like this bit, so like this is Russia, and then like Germany, Paris, France, like the Belgium, Austria, that kind of area. I don't know if there's a word for that, but who knows. So yeah, I just really love it. I've now closed my notebook on my list of books that I'm talking about. Yeah, okay, Okay, and then we have A Master of Gin by P. Jelly Clark, and I really love this series. And this one's kind of got a bit of an more of an established relationship, which I actually really like that in books. So we're following Fatima, who is also, so this is A Master of Gin is like the first full-length novel in the series, but it's not the first book in the series because there are some novellas that come before that. So we have actually met Fatima before, but in this one she works for kind of the Ministry of like Secret Affairs or Secret Magic, something like that. And she's like a detective who investigates magical threats. And she essentially gets this new apprentice at the start of the book, who's great as well. That's a really good, that's not the relationship, but that dynamic as well. I just really loved it, like that bright-eyed apprentice with like the grumpy older mentor. I just love it. And then Fatima's girlfriend City, who's quite like a mysterious character, and she sort of comes and goes as she pleases, but she's such an icon as well, and I just love their relationship in that. But also I love the like mystery and the adventure, and it's kind of set in this like alternative steampunk 1910s Cairo, with all this magic. I really love the magic as well. It's like the kind of Middle Eastern mythology, like jinn and all those kind of things. There's a lot of similar mythology to the Daevabad series. And basically the kind of main plot is there's this cult of this, I don't know what he is, prophet, powerful man who's gone missing, called Al Jazid, many years ago. But then this cult has like popped up worshipping him. But then all the cult gets murdered. This isn't a spoiler, by the way, this is like the prologue. By this person who's claiming to be the recoming of Al Jazid. So then Fatima has to investigate and try and track this person down. So yeah, it's just really fun. It's really good. I love Fatima as a character. She's great. Like the romance is great. The like apprentice grumpy mentor relationship is great as well. And it's just really fun. It almost feels a bit like a kind of cozy mystery, I don't know, in like a very fantastical setting. So yeah, I would just highly recommend that one as well. And then we also have She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. So this one, there's a like whole Sapphic trifecta, but I feel like out of the three, She Who Became the Sun is the one, I like all the books, but this is the only one that I actually like the romance in. Like, I like the Jasmine Throne, but more for the like world building and the like naturey magic. I'm not the biggest fan of the romance in that one. And it's the same with The Unbroken. Like, it's a fascinating book. Like, I like both the characters separately, although Luke is a bit of a but she's an interesting character. But Terrain's really interesting as well, and really like you root for her. And some really interesting themes of like colonization, but the romance I don't really like. So that's kind of why it's not on this list, but they are two also good books. But yeah, I do like She Who Became the Sun. We're following Shu, and she, the start of the book, her like brother and father die, but just shortly before that her brother had a prophecy saying like he would be great, and she had a prophecy saying she would be nothing. But then, so she then decides to take on her brother's identity, essentially. Now he's dead, so she'll be destined for greatness. And then she goes and she like grows up in this monastery, which I always like that kind of thing. And then she goes off and joins the kind of army as like a monk. But she's like a travelling monk, but then she gets herself involved in the like politics of the army. But I just think it's great. I love her as a character. She's so like cheeky and charming. I don't know, I just really like her. And she's quite ruthless as well. And it's sort of based on I think Chinese history. Not quite sure of the time period. I'll put it in the bottom. So I think it is like kind of a bit historical, but there's also kind of fantasy elements as well, so it's not like word for word historical. But yeah, and then there's a really fun Sapphic relationship and a Sapphic fisting scene, which I think I maybe overhyped sometimes, but it was good. Yes, so that's that one as well. I would highly recommend. Although I think I know quite a few people, like I've seen loads of rave reviews, but I've also seen quite a few people who don't love it as much, and I think I've often heard it's because they don't connect with the writing style. So I think it's maybe you have to like the writing style to like it type book. And then we also have, so that's kind of all my main recommendations. So then I just have a few more. So the next three are like honourable mentions. So these are kind of epic fantasy series which have a Sapphic relationship in, which I really like, but it's not really the main focus of the story. Like, they are main characters, but the relationship and like romance aspects are kind of small. Like, yeah, that is basically what I'll say. So the first one is the Dandelion Dynasty, Dynasty even. I always say dynasty, I think that's the American way of saying it. But yeah, so in Wall of Storms, it's not in book 1 but in book 2, there is a Sapphic relationship, which is, it's a small part of the plot, but it made me incredibly excited and I just loved it. I shipped them like so hard. I was shipping them before I even thought it would actually be a thing. Yeah, I just love it. It's a fantastic series, like regardless, you should read it, whatever. But that just extra like little hint just made me love it even more. And also I feel like this isn't representation, but I feel like it's for the Saphics, and that is the absolutely unhinged MILF that is Gia. She is absolutely great. Like, if you're a fan of MILFs like me, especially evil MILFs, you'll love Gia. Like, oh. Yeah, and it's again a really interesting kind of historical fantasy series, very like philosophical. There's so many like beautiful sort of moments of prose, and it's not like flowery prose, but just sometimes it's like so profound. It's just so good. I just love it. The characters are all great. So that's that series. And then the other series is like Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. So again, not in the first book, but in books 2 and 3, there's kind of well, they are main characters in the first book, but they're not together. But like my gaydar was pinging and then they're like married by the start of book 2, so I was like, yes, I knew it. And yeah, I really like them as a couple as well. They're main characters again, but like the romance isn't really a focus of it. But I do like that they're together. And yeah, and I can't really tell you what that series is about. It's just a ride. It's very like political, and there's a few interesting characters and like family drama as well. And actually book 1 has another evil unhinged MILF, so would recommend it for that as well. So yeah, they're my 2 like honourable mentions. I think I said there were 3, but I was just looking at one of the things I've written is honourable mentions, so that's not a book. And then the other book that I wanted to mention that I'm planning on reading soon, and that is The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Sterling. I don't know much about this one, but I think it has maybe similar vibes to Into the Drowning Deep, and I've heard it's like horror-y. They're like trapped in a cave. I've heard it's maybe a bit of a like toxic-y relationship, which is kind of good. Like, I tend to like slightly more wholesome relationships, but just occasionally you're down for a bit of like toxic, messy drama. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting. Actually, another book that I've read, so I've tried to keep this list to like my favourite books, like books I've given 4.5 or 5 stars to. But there are a few other Sapphic books which I've read. Obviously I read more than what's on this list, but one of them is Stars of Legion by Cameron Hurley. I don't know how much I recommend the book, but if you like mess and drama, that is a great book. So yeah, that is the list. Definitely let me know in the comments any Sapphic fantasy books you've read recently that you really loved and would like to share with the class. I'd really love to know, because I'm always looking for more. I'm especially looking for like classic feeling Sapphic fantasy, like, because I've recently been reading Look in the Shadows, which is like a Killian, but I just love that kind of classic fantasy but queer, so I really want that in a Sapphic one. I don't know. So yeah, that's something I'm on the lookout for, but I will let you know if I find anything like that. Yeah, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I hope you're all having a really great day, and I will see you next time.